Now,
And look, you're even smaller than I am.
I know this is a little different than normal context, but if you feel like punching anybody in the front row, I'd be super excited about it.
Let's do it.
Who do you not like in the front row?
I'm aiming towards hat guy, but that's just my personal bias.
I had that natural.
Right? I love it. This guy, he gets it.
I like your hat.
Let's start out. Jason, how did
Yes?
this all come to be?
I don't know. Yeah, actually, a couple years ago, I think for quite some time, I'd wanted to make a documentary film of sorts. It's either going to be about motorcycles or music, and I've played in bands in the past and have a passion, for music that I guess I'm a little more passionate for music than motorcycles. So I'd kind of contemplated an idea here and there for off and on for a few years, and quite honestly, as bullshit as it sounds, around October of 2012, I woke up one morning and I honestly kind of had this idea about talking to people that kind of had an influence on me or had an impact on me. It changed my life. And I basically woke up and I told my wife this idea, and she was like, "What? That's fucking badass." I was like, does that sound like a cool idea? Like something, something somebody would be into. But I kind of ran with it. JP was the first person I talked to. And it just kind of snowballed from there. I was just really excited to talk to people about music, the records that changed their lives. A lot of these people sitting up here had a lot to do with what, the person I am today. And
That's too bad.
really, yeah, exactly. But I really kind of wanted to talk to them about, what record, what song, what band changed your life? What made you pick the path in life you chose? And kind of goes full circle, so.
Nice. Yeah, it was just cool to hear echoed so many things that I imagine everybody else here has had, where it's like, oh, yeah, you said it. They said it out loud. Just right. So the first thing I want to talk about is the record that broke your brain. Well, because I feel like that's a beautiful sort of like sentiment that gets talked about in the movie is I feel like for everybody who's sort of into music and into creativity, there's that moment where you hear a record where like, that's allowed?
Yeah.
And hearing that, I'd love to hear anybody's thought process on that and expand a little more from what we've heard.
Well, that was the thing too, filming people. I'm off camera and I was like wanting to fucking just yell out a lot of times when people were talking, like they, he'd say something, and I was just like, yeah, totally, to that record, that song, exactly. But yeah.
Everybody who got to speak in the movie, watching it back, everybody feeling self-conscious? Are we feeling good about this? Do we have any addendums we'd like to add?
Come on. I was going to say, I hope all of you can experience hearing your voice and seeing you on film too. Horrible it is. I was sitting in the back with a post in front of me going, it's worse than I thought it was. But it was all right. In the end, it was a really good film. I enjoyed it. But seeing yourself on film is terrible. Keith doesn't feel that way, though.
Keith likes the attention.
You sure about that?
Do you have any shirts that aren't insurance shirts?
Yeah, right? How do you feel about them?
I was just on tour in Europe and left a soaking wet Turbo Negro t-shirt on a leather sofa. And I'm really bummed because I'm going to have to try to get a hold of Happy Tom to get another one. But I only actually have 2 germ t-shirts.
Danny?
Your turn.
What are your thoughts, Bill?
Well, I kind of feel the same way. If I had like a cat face with like 2 X's over it or something, or like, and then it was like my voice was in Spanish, it would have been amazing. Seeing yourself is not really that exciting, and talking about records that geek you out that are like, moments that you had in your bedroom when nobody else was around is sort of always kind of an odd thing, and you're seeing like little moments of it, so. It was well done, but seeing yourself is always sort of creepy for me.
You can tell me really what you think. It's okay.
I can go.
I mean, I've never made a film. This is the first film I ever made. So so lay it on. Come on, give it to Keith. Hand it off to Keith.
If it's been like me 20 years ago, I don't care because it's like another person. But when you see yourself now, you're like, go next. But it's just me. It's just a personal thing.
I feel like everybody's just like, couldn't I have had that blue dot and like face, modulation like on the first 48? Like you're a witness in a crime. My first major question to everybody as I was watching the thing is like, at what point in your record collecting time did you realize, oh, I need to own some kind of a home or something? Because I've found just in over time, it's just as the collection overtakes you. Just let's talk storage. Let's get real practical for a minute here. At what point did you have to get serious about record storage, guys?
Storage? I don't care. I've actually, my wife, she was kind of looking for a hobby. And I was like, you know what you should do? You should start buying records. And so, yeah, actually, she's taken on the whole attitude I have. I'm like, the more records, the better, you know? Get rid of the fucking couch. I don't care. Let's have records.
There's a great documentary that Fuse does where it goes through different people's like record collections, and every single one of them to a person goes, and most of the collection is in my parents' garage.
In New Jersey.
In New Jersey.
Or somebody like that character over there that has a storage facility. Pat.
What the hell's that?
I'm in Azusa. Yeah. Climate controlled and it's cheap.
All right, come here for a minute. Come here. Tell me at what point it developed into, oh, Azusa seems nice. Let's put these in here.
Well, I own a house, co-own a house with my ex-wife in the Bay Area, so that's full of records. And then I had a storage facility in Livermore, California, and that was full of records. And so when I moved down to LA, I started calling around for climate controlled, and it turned out that in Azusa, it's 50% less than if you had it in Hollywood. So,
Okay.
but I have roughly a tractor trailer's worth of vinyl, CDs, and books.
Did you have to trick it out?
The storage space?
Yeah.
No, it was, I went and looked around, and they had air conditioning and security and blah, 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 blah. And it was cool.
Very cool. Thank you.
Let's hear it for Pat, everybody. You have to make this guy say something.
Right? That is my challenge.
San Diego music scene or anything, just this guy. Here.
Well, first of all, I feel like I'm in a police lineup, which is really fucking...
It was the height marker.
I'm used to
That
this
seems like
shit,
a
but it's
mistake.
weird, you know. It's like, I'm always guilty. I don't have a storage space because I always lived with drug addicts and shit that would steal all my stuff. So I would always go to the record store to be like, oh shit, that's my, autographed PIL 7-inch. I need to buy that back now. Yeah. That happened a lot, actually. One of my bandmates now is actually one of the responsible people for stealing all my shit once. Fucking weird. Yeah, heroin's a bitch, I guess. I never did it, but I experienced it in other ways. That gentleman was probably the most impressive record collector out of all of them. I wish that I talked more about my obsession with those Star Wars 7-inch books, because I thought...
that came with the storybooks.
Yeah, that was pre-music for me, and I thought like, oh, it's about records, I have to talk about the Sex Pistols, but fuck, I would have talked about Chewbacca and Han Solo till I turned blue.
Do you still have them?
I have 2 of them, but I had like crazy, weird shit that I don't even know what it was. Like, not even like cool Star Wars stuff, just like random stuff about beings that from other universes that weren't cool or popular. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess.
Do you guys remember the National Geographic Page vinyls they used to do that had whale sounds and stuff? Yeah. Those were a real fascination of mine for a while.
Like the Flexi?
Yeah, the Flexi discs, the most impossible thing to maintain.
Right.
I just manufactured a Flexi.
Did you?
Yeah, it's on a postcard. It sounds like crap.
There's a lot of Polish ones. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
They
might be Giants did a bunch too. Yeah. They got real into Flexi discs because they were cheap, and then they'd destroy them, so you had to buy more. You in particular have one of my prized vinyls in my collection. Is the Arab of On Radar split with the Locust that's shaped like an amoeba?
It's a puddle.
Is that what it is?
5 different fluids.
In my brain, it's been an amoeba for an awful long time.
If you look at the label, there's like a nose. There's a nose for snot, and there's a dick for cum. I mean, there's boobs for breast milk. I don't know. There's all these different. There's blood. There's like a slit wrist. So it's like a color, a liquid.
That was one of the first records when I came into record collecting. I inherited from my record clerk guy. Threw that at me, and I opened it up. I'm like, this is a thing.
That's when you just started, right
yeah,
then?
That was, yeah.
You're late.
I came late to the vinyl collecting party.
Notice how I've become his
I like it. This is a
human
good system.
mic stand.
Thank you very much. This is San Diego royalty.
I'll just walk down the aisle here. Anybody else want to talk?
Like the Modern day.
I want to go down the list. What is something in your collection that when you look through, you're like, I'm glad I held on to this through all the moves, through all the relationships, through everything. I'm going to start this way and we'll work down. Something that just makes you happy that is still in your world.
I don't have anything left.
It's just all gone.
He's not lying.
I only recently was given a USB turntable, and it's a piece of shit. And because I got that, I've been given some vinyl, and I don't really have any.
I like it. It's
He actually gave us a couple records when we were there. He's like, I don't know what this is. Take it. I was like, really? You sure? So thanks, David.
What do you got?
Well, it was one of the Hayes amphetamine reptile splits, which is actually fucking badass. But you gave me a copy, and
You have about that many 7-inches.
yeah, you had a few, but he only had a couple records, but whatever. I mean, it's David Yow. Come on. I'm like, we can talk about your tube sock collection. I don't care.
When I got this turntable, it was around my birthday, and my girlfriend gave me a gift certificate to Amoeba, and I went and got I think I got a Black Sabbath record and a Jethro Tull record.
Excellent.
What's Jethro Tull album?
Which Tull?
The best of.
Okay.
Safe
I would say benefit.
That's not a bad call. If you're,
I kind of like the first one because they're a blues band.
I always think gun to your head, pick a Jethro Tull album, and then I feel like I picked the Then Shoot Me option.
Really? They're that bad?
I don't know. They always symbolize dad music.
Wait, how old are you?
I'm 28.
How old are you? Okay, see, I'm fucking
So I can
90
just
years
make
old.
everyone
But the first
feel like
one's
death is
actually
upon
much
us.
different because it's actually they are sort
This is
of a
the
blues
same Fleetwood Mac excuse. Like, you got to get that first one, man,
No, wait,
before it
wait
all
a
gave
minute.
up.
Wait.
No, dude.
Here we go.
Number one. I saw Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac like 3 times. Okay, and I'm gonna tell you, this is a band that is beyond amazing. And we were a 3-guitar assault. I will stand by that band till like the day I die and beyond.
Play On.
Then Play On is an amazing album. When I was a little kid, I went to the Shrine Expo, and I went and saw Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac and the Mothers of Invention.
Oh, shit.
And it was a mind-blowing gig. And there was 2 stages, but the stage with Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac and the Mothers of Invention was in front of me. And I saw, and Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac, it was a moment, that's one of those moments. It was like, this is incredible because Peter Green's guitar playing was otherworldly. And then the Mother's first set was Reuben and the Jets. The second set, though, was crazy. They came out, it was all improv. They said, Zappa goes, who in the audience wants to make $100? And guy raises his hand, he comes up, Zappa yells a bunch of stuff in his ear. I'm a little kid, and this girl comes out in bra and underwear with a lot of bruises, and believe me, I remember this, and I had nothing to do with the bruises, and they proceed to start beating her with a belt, and then the guy has told us to yell various profanities, and for 45 minutes it was just a completely crazy improv set. That is a show I will always remember because I was so little, and
Was that your first concert?
No.
What was your first show?
My brother,
Whatever.
my late brother Jonathan Benair, who is beyond awesome, Lisa knew him, was so hip that he convinced my mom to take us to see the new Christie Minstrels for the opening act, who was Woody Allen.
Whoa.
So that was probably the first show I saw.
David Yow. What was your first show? First concert?
Led Zeppelin.
Where at?
May 21st, 1977 at the Summit in Houston. But my sister's first concert was Bobby Sherman.
Oh.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Keith?
I got to see Arthur Lee in Love,
What?
Nice.
sandwiched in between a couple of cruddy movies for 25 cents at the Kiddie Matinee on a Saturday afternoon.
How old were you?
Like 10 or 11, 12 maybe. And then a week later, I got to see the Barbarians with Molty, who was the guy that was born with one of his hands. He was born without a hand, so he had a clasp, but he was the drummer. So he played drums with one hand and held
Both hands.
the other drum and the other drumstick in his clasp.
Crazy.
The
And then I
first.
got to see the Doors rehearse in the garage in Manhattan Beach.
No shit.
Nice. The first concert I can remember going to is the Kinks circa Everybody's in Showbiz. I might have gone to something earlier. My sister.
Where was it at?
The lady.
What do you mean?
What?
The first concert you went to?
Yeah.
What do you mean? You saw bands like the Runaways and crap. What do you?
Everybody's in Showbiz. What
That's
year
like
did that come out?
70 something.
74. That was before the Runaways. That was after the Runaways, Danny.
Oh
Seriously.
yeah, right. You know my brains.
Anyway.
Well, I went. But the creative. There's two ones. I went to Altamont.
Really?
And my story.
And had a wonderful time.
And my story is 100% true and it's real. And I'll tell it because I like telling a story.
Please.
My brother the night before, who's 5 years older than me, decides we're going to go to Altamont with his friend David Morrison, who looked like a combination of Bill Wyman and Charlie Watts, and his girlfriend, Benita. And next morning we get up and we hop in the car and we hit Tulare and a rock breaks my brother's gas tank. We wait for like 3 hours for a gas station to open. They fix it. We get to Altamont, it's late. It's already like noon. We just park the car and we start walking. But what we don't realize is we walk in and we don't walk in the back, in through the audience. We walk through backstage. So we end up right next to the stage. See the whole show, see the Burrito Brothers, see Santana, see people getting beat with pool cues that are naked screaming, I want to play drums with Santana. See Marty Balin of an Airplane get decked. When the Stone Star were right in front, and the Hells Angels, by this point it's completely frightening, and Hells Angels had parked motorcycles in front of the stage, and one of them tipped over and they started... it's in the film. I'm in the film. I've seen myself in the film. And they start chasing people. And I fell down. My brother pulled me up after I'd been run over a few times. I'm a little kid. We go behind the stage. My brother hops on the stage. They kick him off immediately. I stood on Keith and Mick's amp line and watched the rest of the show. And when the set was done, I looked over at Charlie Watts, who I adored, and he had a crushed velvet jacket next to his floor tom, and I tapped him on the shoulder and said, Charlie, can I have your drumsticks? And he gave me his drumsticks, and I have them to this day.
Oh, my God.
And 2 weeks later, Rolling Stone issue comes out about Altamont. There's a giant photo of a blonde chick, an African-American guy, and staring right in the camera is my awesome brother. And he's in the Altamont issue. So it was really kind of amazing.
That is amazing. So you
That's my
did
story.
kind of go to Altamont and have the one lovely time.
No, it is without a doubt.
Stab free for sure.
Any gig. No, I'm actually in the Altamont book that came out 2 years ago. There's a photo that says, Meredith Hunter in green, and on 2 rows in front of him is me, my brother, and the posse, and then Keith Richards is in the foreground, and it's like, from any gig I played where we got shit thrown at us to seeing any other punk rock show, that is the gig, without a doubt, is the most frightening in my life.
Oh, wow. Justin, what was your first show?
Beat that.
I can't beat that. When I was 7, on my 7th birthday, my parents took me to see Shaka Khan. I only liked the one song. The Hells Angels were not there. On contrary,
She had a falling out with them.
well, I don't know. Everybody was black, which was cool because I was in Arizona and it was pretty fucked up and racist there. But yeah, everyone was black and smoking weed, and I remember just thinking like, what is that crazy smell? And me and my parents were super high. It was really fucking weird. So it's not as good as yours, but I was 7 years old, ripped out of my mind with my parents.
Just as good.
Yeah, I get. No Hells Angels. But yeah, so that was like my first concert. But I attribute my first real one is the Cramps when I was 12. I somehow met them. They were like, oh. I said, can I get my T-shirt signed? And the usher was like, you're little and cute. Come on. And I was like, okay. And she took my shirt, and I thought like, oh, wait here. And she's like, no, come here. And opens the door, and they're right there. And they told me to sit down. And Poison Ivy kissed me on my cheek, and I was like, holy shit, this is it, you know. And Lux was super chill, and it was with Candy Del Mar and Nick Knox, and the lineup was just stellar. And I remember thinking like, all right, fuck it, I'm gonna start a band now. This is it, you know. And that was that. It was much different than Shaka Khan and getting high with my parents. So.
Did you list yours? First concert?
No.
That means it's an embarrassing one.
It was my cousin's birthday, and I saw Sean Cassidy in Kansas City.
That's not that bad.
Yeah, but the one I rave about, I kind of skip over that one and always tell people that I saw Judas Priest open for Kiss, and my mom took me, and my grandma went.
Did she get down? Was she like,
oh yeah, she had cotton in her ears. There's pictures around somewhere. She has cotton in her fucking ears, and she was like, what the? But I had Gene Simmons makeup on.
What's the oddest pairing any of you guys have been to at a show? Like, I feel like some...
Austin talked about Shaka Khan. I saw Rufus with Shaka Khan open for Leonard Skinner at the Whiskey A Go-Go. And speaking of like dangerous concerts, you've got a room with bikers on one side, all of the coke-sniffing Soul Brothers on the other side, and Soul Sisters. All of the Cowboys and the Laurel Canyon people, and it looks like there's going to be a brawl. It's going to turn into a massive fight. And once Rufus and Shaka Khan started playing, the whole place erupted into just this incredible vibe. Like, everybody was there for one reason and one reason only, and that was to have a great time.
I saw them open for Rory Gallagher.
Rufus and Shaka Khan.
Yes.
Yeah.
They got a lot of those weird bills.
But you did say with Leonard Skinner, right?
With Leonard Skinner.
I had a friend who had almost the same set, but it was LL Cool J and Leonard Skinner together.
What?
And Leonard Skinner played first, and you thought a race riot was going to break out, and instead just the whitest rednecks that Alabama had to offer, just grooving.
Where was
it? It was in Alabama.
I was like, yeah.
That's
I didn't see this show, but it's always a show people will, if they ever see old ads of the Whiskey A Go-Go. It was Yes and Mary Wells. And I just think that is awesome. It's just like, it's like, who puts this pairing together? It's like,
I imagine they were just like, well, we promised Mary another spot this week. Well, Yes are cool guys. We'll let them through. Those laid-back prog guys.
Yeah.
This whole panel are a pretty punk-friendly group. And so just for my own curiosity, I first punk show for everybody, or the moment where you're like, oh, I think this might be a lifestyle now. And we'll put power pop into that as well.
Okay. Well, for me, I saw my mom took me to see Black Flag on the My War tour, and I know for many people that punk was gone, it was dead. They were fucking trying to be Foghat by then, but
kind of succeeding.
But honestly, that made a very big impact on me. It changed my life. That's the reason why I'm sitting here. It's the reason why that film was made. So
Nice.
I already said mine, the Cramps.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Well, I'm way too old. So my first band. We played with like the Damned, and it was like they were the first punk band to come to America, and they had nowhere to stay. And I remember I got to know Rat Scabies, and I was a drummer, and I was sort of flamboyant. And my band was a band called The Quick, and Rat would stand by his side, and he would take, like, all of a sudden he looked over at me, he goes, watch this, and he would take lighter fluid, and he would light his cymbals on fire, and he'd look over at me and like, okay, yes, you win, Or then he'd take water and pour them on his drums because it would go sparkling. And I loved seeing the Damned. It was, they were sort of extraordinary.
We used to drive them around.
We drove them around. They came to my parents' house.
Yeah, we used to drive them around in a station wagon.
Yes.
And they were just out of their minds. They would carry around a bird cage, and Captain Sensible would talk to a bird.
But they came, they came and met my mom and stuff, and they were really nice. I mean, they were actually very nice guys anyway. But Captain and Rat, who you take them out of the mom thing, and they were just, who knows what was going to happen.
From my experience with music, that's one of my favorite games. Is my brother and I's house has been the home for touring bands for many years now, and how many bands are just super polite to moms. It always does my heart good that a band knows if you're going to sleep on a couch, you got to get good in with mom, because then they'll feed you.
I saw a series of shows. Kim Fowley put on a series of shows at the Whiskey, and it was the first Germs, Deadbeats, many. I'm sure you were there. Did you see those?
I didn't see.
There was
any
3
of those.
nights. There was terrible, and I wasn't sure punk was going to take off here because we'd heard a lot of the UK stuff, and it was just like, I don't know about any of this. And anyway, very shortly thereafter, the Mask opened, and
What were those early days like out here?
the Mask was different. The Kim Fowley shows they were tame, but by the Mask time, that was like a whole different story. The whole thing was like a giant restroom. It was just like, people slept there, they rehearsed there. There wasn't a lot of fighting. We went to a few shows at the Mask, but there wasn't a huge amount of fighting, I would say. But it got into that when people saw how the UK people act, and they spit and throw things, and people flying through the air. The really bad behavior didn't start till the hardcore days, I would say. Your fault.
Keith, would you like to take responsibility for all bad hardcore behavior?
I'm sorry. All you Hollywood people. That had to do because we came from an area where there were a lot of athleticism.
Yeah.
And
you had a different breed of jock to fight.
The whole idea was to just go for it. My favorite punk rock show that I saw was Iggy and the Stooges at the Whiskey A Go Go.
I saw that show too.
With
I don't know who opened.
James Williamson.
Oh, with Williamson. Yeah, no, it was the Raw Power album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were on their last legs. They were getting ready to break up.
Yep.
And that was pretty amazing. But I think out of all of my live musical experience, the most punk rock scenario that I witnessed was Ray Davies punched Dave Davies and almost knock him out, but he continued to play the song while he was laying on the stage.
I saw them get in a fight too.
And that was Muswell Hillbillies.
Yep. I saw 2 different fist fights on stage. Excellent.
When I saw the Stooges, I was underage and I got drunk and I was enjoying myself and I just for whatever reason I said, "Hey Iggy, you suck." Without a beat, he goes, "Your mother smells like a fish." Boom. It was like boom. It was like that was just so good.
Shut down.
It was so good. That's better than anything, It's like
so good. David, do you remember your first punk rock situation?
I liked the new wave and stuff. I liked Elvis Costello and the B-52s and stuff. And then me and my buddy, we'd heard about this band in Austin called the Huns.
Yeah.
I read this article in Rolling Stone magazine where they talked about the Huns from Austin were in some battle with the Dallas band called the Vomit Pigs. And so on Halloween of '79, me and my buddy went to go see the Huns, and it was, honest to God, a life-changing moment. It had never occurred to me that you would be intimidated or afraid of the band that you'd paid $2 to see, and it blew my fucking mind, and it was. Everything from that point on was different.
So a lot of your early stuff was out in Texas, right?
Yes.
So punk shows up, cowboys in Texas, notoriously not super down for change and people looking funny. Like, what was it like opting like punk rock is where I'm going to plant my flag, come and get me, cowboys? I was in
Austin, and Austin is, if there's a forward-thinking town in Texas, that's it. Because it was more hippies than it was rednecks. The problem with the punk rock in Austin, the conflict was with frat boys, because it was all right around the University of Texas area. And the frats, it was kind of a war between the frats and the punks. And recently, Tim Kerr from the Big Boys, I saw some tape of him talking about this thing that I'd forgotten about, which was really kind of funny. They'd always, frats would drive by and go, "Devo!" And but there was we used to hang out at this club called Raoul's, and I never had any money, so I'd hang out up front and smoke cigarettes. And the frats would drive by and throw stuff at us, and they'd be busy looking at us or whatever, and then have a wreck at the red light that was right there. So that was always pretty good. Yeah.
I found that, Jace, one of the things I liked most is that you guys touched on, the tastemaker record clerk and the small victory of having the record clerk go, oh, so you're interested in this, huh? And being guided that way. I would love to, if anybody wants to expand on their guy or gal who pushed them, because I feel like that's such a, to get to the level of music nerdery, I feel like it's always sort of, there are shaman along the way who take you to these places.
Now there's definitely, for me, I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. Like I said, I kind of was a latecomer to many people's accounts, and these guys up here, would probably be like, whatever. But
whatever.
Exactly. But there's a place called Rock Therapy in Kansas City, Missouri, and this guy named Duncan, and he was definitely the guy. I first heard Sex Pistols as Justin, and that kind of changed my life. I went from classic rock and loving Jimi Hendrix, all that stuff I still love today, but ZZ Top, Van Halen, all that kind of shit. But I heard Sex Pistols, and I wanted more. Like, that Sex Pistols record changed my life. So I actually remember calling record stores. Like, there's a chain, I think, kind of a chain. Tim Dow can tell me if this is wrong or not, but Peaches Records. And, they were like, well, what are you looking for? Because I'd call them on the phone and be like, oh, punk rock. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I mean, obviously these guys, they work at a record store.
And you're just an abstract pile of 45s that just say punk in all capital letters.
Yeah, I'm 12, 13. I'm like, punk rock,
punk
whatever. But some kind soul told me to buy the Decline of the Western Civilization soundtrack. So that changed my life. But then I felt like I was armed with ammo, Black Flag, Fear, Circle Jerks, but then I discovered, one of these guys told me from one of these chain stores, he's like, you got to go to Rock Therapy, you got to check this place out. And like I said, that's where I went, and I started buying records. And this guy Duncan would be like, check this out, like I got like Sick Pleasure, 7-inch, G.G. Allen, stuff like that. And that's actually when I looked over, I'd gone there a couple times. I'd save up my money, like lawn mowing money and all that kind of shit. And I remember looking over, and in the window there was a flyer for Black Flag, My War, Meat Puppets. And, again, like I said, this is later, but definitely a big impact on me. Because I was like, wait, what? Is that going on? He's like, yeah, VFW Hall right up the street, man, And I was just like, I thought it was just punk rock was something that happened in New York and Los Angeles. I had no clue that these bands toured. So Rock Therapy and Duncan definitely changed my life.
Anybody else want to pay tribute to their guy or girl?
I've got a guy.
Oh, there we go.
In the film, I rattle off a bunch of prog rock bands who are amazing bands. They're all amazing musicians. All of the stuff, there's so many different directions that you can go in. The record store that I hung out in, there was a guy named Michael Piper who would eventually become the guy who I would say would be most responsible for Black Flag. And this is the guy who, I grew up at the beach. I hated the Beach Boys, but would eventually realize and understand the genius of the Beach Boys. I wasn't having it at the time. I needed
They were a little
Sabbath.
happy.
No, I needed Black Sabbath and Ted Nugent, anything that was loud, anything abrasive. But I rattled off all of these amazing prog rock bands, and that was all due to the fact that I'd hang out at this record store with Michael Piper. What would eventually happen is Greg Ginn would show up being dragged along by his younger sister, who was dating Michael. And that's how I developed my friendship with Greg Ginn, was they would take off to go do what young lovers do. And that's when the Linda Ronstadt would come off, or the Joni Mitchell, or the Eagles, or Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks album, all of that stuff. That was all regular play in the record store, and it was like, I'm glad they're gone because I'm going to find the loudest thing I can find. Uriah Heep, or, you know, Trapeze, or Aerosmith, something, you know, much wilder and louder. And that's when Greg Ginn and I developed our friendship. So Michael Piper pretty much paved the way for me becoming a member of Black Flag.
Wait. Tell them. I remember you talking when I interviewed you. What was the first show you guys went to? First concert?
The first concert that we went to.
With Greg, yeah, you and Greg.
Yeah. In my '63 Chevy Impala was Journey and Thin Lizzy at the Santa Monica Civic. And that was at a time when you could go to a show and you could see some amazing bands for $5. Yeah. You know, they would always have those shows at the Palladium was a great place to go. $5-6, 6 bands. Maybe they were, you know, we had this thing, having played the music or whatever you want to call it, that I've been involved in. I'm sure Justin, maybe David, maybe even you, Mr. Benair, where it's like some kind of a marathon, like the punk rock marathon, where there's 7 bands and they all sound alike. At that time, it would be like 4, 5, 6 bands, and none of them sounded alike.
I love looking at some of those vintage lineups before things sort of like all homogenized into separate scenes. To me, that's always sort of a cool thing when you see the birth of stuff where it's like, well, they sound like this and this, but they all look weird, so here you go. Lisa, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
As the person sitting on this...
I thought of an old answer.
Oh, okay, please.
When I saw the Jam, Johnny Cougar opened for them.
Oh.
And the whole audience just pelted him with rocks and garbage and took their shoes off and hurled them. It was, I don't know who his manager was or if he was still with Main Man, but wow, that was a terrible idea.
I wish I remembered the name of the opening band. I went to a show once where the opener was clearly set up through the venue, and it was for TSOL and the Adolescents, and I lost my car keys during the show, and I went to the venue, the guy running it afterwards, and was like, hey, his keys showed up, and they start laughing, and they say, remember that awful opening band that didn't match the show? I'm like, yeah. He's like, someone found your keys and hucked him at the bass player's face. And he's like, if the opening band hadn't been so shitty, you would have never found your keys. So I feel like I have to ask, as the person here who's probably responsible for the most records in my collection of anybody sitting out here,
that's so cool.
Frontier Records, Jesus Christ, you guys have done some work.
It's just me.
Right?
You could call it. You could call it we. Thank you. I don't know what to say to that.
At what point does it go from like, I love music, I enjoy stuff, to like, I'm hearing cool stuff, I want to put it out? I feel like that's a whole other level of like rock fandom and like going into like getting actually involved in the process of putting records out.
Yeah, I think after having been, writing about music and having fanzines and stuff, the next step was to actually put out records, and because it's much more important than just, writing about something. It's like you describe it, sounds like this, sounds like that. So I was just putting myself on the line and investing in bands that I thought people would like. Thank goodness they did. But I saw Keith in Black Flag, and it was just like, I thought he was amazing. It was way before the Circle Jerks. But I got their single in the mail. Like, they were together enough to actually mail me a copy of the Black Flag single when I had a fancy.
Write something good about us?
Yep.
Now, you're doing this in an age before, long before the internet. As a room full of young people huddled here, the idea of putting anything together of any level of detail without clinging to the internet, how did you do that? That seems impossible. Were flares involved? Like, what happened?
Flares, more
semaphore.
In terms of what? Like getting people to buy it?
Like figuring out how to make a wax disc that plays sound.
Well, luckily for me, I worked at a label already. I worked at Bomp Records. So I already knew how, I knew where you sent a jacket, and doing it for yourself is a whole different story.
Do you remember gluing those early folds together?
No, it was just like it took me a whole year. The first record I put out was actually the Flyboys. It took an entire year to get that record out because I had no idea what I was doing. Even though you know where to send things and how it happens, it's like when you do it yourself, it's a whole different thing. We recorded in the middle of the night. Leon Russell had a studio in the Valley, and we would go in when it was closed and record in the middle of the night with the Flyboys. So it took a while to do that. Then the cover was a fiasco. And then when I finally got it together to put it out, the band called me and said that they broke up like probably 2 days before the record came out. So I was like, yes. This was a great choice.
It's going to make promotion way harder.
Better. Yeah, thank goodness I didn't go to college.
Do you remember what plant you pressed it through? Was it one based out here?
It was a place called Alco, and it was in Sun Valley, believe it or not.
Really?
Yep. It was in beautiful Sun Valley, California, where I grew up.
Very cool. Does anybody else have, because I feel like there's a handful of people here who might have put a record or two out by hand at any given point in time. Any memories of
I did,
yeah.
I mean,
I like you said that like you were confessing, like, I did.
No, well, the first band that was in the Quick, we were signed. I mean, I just spoke about this recently because Kim Fowley passed away, and I really feel without Kim that I probably might, I don't know if I ever would have been in the music business. At that point in time, he got my band, The Quick, a record deal on Mercury, which was considered a major, but it's probably like a secondary label. But he had just gotten the Runaway sign there. So we got a record made on a major, and we left Kim pretty quickly. It just sort of fell apart because he just took his eye off the ball. But, he was awesome. And, he speaking about no internet, I mean, basically we were playing like, Jewish temples and hair salons, and then we play the Starwood, and it's basically like complete word of mouth and a flyer, and 1,000 people show up, and it's completely at a point in time where that would happen because kids would want to do something because there was no scene. So after all that happened, we kept persevering as a band, and we started doing all these demos for Elektra with David Campbell, who is known as a big string arranger, but he's also known as Beck's dad. And he was producing us. We were trying to get a deal. And then we decided that we wanted to maybe put something out. And so the band all discussed it, and Lisa was running our fan club, and we decided to do a 10-inch. And it was really like we numbered them, we signed everyone, we made like about 250, and they're worth like about $500 now each. I mean, they're but it was really hard to do because absolutely there was no. She had the fortune of getting Greg Shaw and Bomp, and I worked at Bomp Records too, and I can say that Greg was very influential in like you could walk in his office anytime and he'd like, oh, I know what you'll like, and he'd pull out a stack of records and start playing for you. And the same thing, he already had that system going. We had no idea. It was like white labels. I found, like in the last year, I found the labels for the 10-inch that we were actually going to put on that we never used. So,
That's my favorite, is assembling records and then finding later all the shit that was the leftovers from 5 albums ago.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
Got thrown in a box and shoved somewhere. I'm like, this will be useful at some point.
No, it's crazy. It's crazy. And I think that's the most exciting thing is when you start out and you have no idea because you don't. There's no expectation, so it's really like if you put something out and it happens, it's not like how you're going to be bummed if it doesn't, because who's telling you?
You made a thing.
Right, you made something.
That's such a satisfying thing in music, is that moment where you're like, well, fuck you, I made a thing. This exists, I can hold it. Justin, I feel like you transcend a little bit into being a little younger than the rest of the gang, where you sort of straddle with, especially the Locust, sort of just into the shift from like what had existed up to that point into, because you were one of the first bands I liked on MySpace, sir.
I'm sorry.
Somebody showed me a video, you guys, and I was like, yeah, I'm in. Let's do this. What was it like, sort of a generation later, trying to do that kind of stuff?
Fortunately, I started before MySpace, so there was no internet. And, we would book tours with these things called dialers, which we'd go to get at Radio Shack, and you could use it on a payphone and call to book shows and stuff for free, long distance. And, you end up playing at someone's basement and stuff. But as far as putting out records, we found this place called United Record Pressing.
Was it important for you to put out vinyl? Like, cause that
was the only option, really. Cassettes were kind of dying, and I think CDs were I don't know. It was like kind of vinyl was like what you did, and so we would press just the record, and then we'd go to Kinko's, and all the punks would be at the age where they can get jobs at Kinko's, like the ones that didn't have fucked up hair and stuff could get a job there, and they would kind of be the one that would hook you up to print your covers and stuff, and so. We'd go to Kinko's and get free covers in the middle of the night, and that, or steal their copy keys and go print it and switch them out and stuff. But I remember like seeing Born Against play in Kinko's in Santa Barbara, and like that was just unheard of inside Kinko's because it was 24 hours. So it'd be like, all right, like at 11 o'clock we're gonna have this thing happen, and so people would show up to see bands. But yeah, Born Against and Kinko's fantastic, and I was like Sam McPheeters like bleeding and rolling on the floor, and there's like a color copier right there, and you're like, that's cool. But I remember even before that though, one of my first, I joined this band called Brain Tourniquet for a brief moment, and there was going to be Gravity Records #1 actually. It was supposed to be this Brain Tourniquet Sloog split. Flexi, I guess, and they sent it to the only place at the time that made flexis, and for whatever reason they got a hold of the tapes, and they said, oh, there's too many swear words, so we're not going to put this out. And so it came out as a cassette on Gravity as Gravity 1, and it was really kind of, I was like, oh cool, like the first record or whatever, and there were like too many swear words, but and then so anyhow.
That always felt like punk rock bonus when you submitted or tried to get something recorded or tried to book a show somewhere, and they're like, you guys swear too much and it's too loud.
It's a pro and a con.
Yeah.
You're like, well, that's cool.
Like, I feel cool, but like now I can't play your church benefit show.
Yeah.
Keith, do you remember what the first record with your recorded voice on it was?
The Black Flag Nervous Breakdown EP.
That's it's not a bad one to start on. Do you feel like you've ever recovered?
Royalty-wise? Have I ever recovered?
Just emotionally or financially? Physically?
It was such an amazing experience because we never thought that we would get to the point where we would actually go into a recording studio, and there was so much stuff flying around at the time that it was just this combination of all this wildness and partying and all of the people that we were surrounded by. Carrie, being one of the members of the church, all of these different people, all of these different situations. It just turned into this big pot of stuff that it was swirling around, and we just went and did it.
Justin touched on this. Do you remember what it felt like hearing your stuff anybody played back the first time? Because I feel like that's a real intoxicating moment where it's like you've heard it played and you've heard yourself go, but all of a sudden being a passive listener of something you've made.
Not really passive listener. I mean, I've grown to be a passive listener. Like we were talking earlier about, well, what do you think about watching yourself in a documentary? I've seen myself in too many documentaries. So I'm happy for Jason. It's a really great documentary. I think that it's really well put together. Everybody that is a part of it has a lot of really cool things to say.
Have you and Henry ever thought about putting a chart up to see pound for pound who appears in more documentaries? That's not an O. They both talk because they know a lot of music, guys.
It's not an O. It's an ouch. What? Not really.
Oh.
No.
Let's just say I didn't seek. This is nothing against Henry Rollins, but I didn't seek him out to ask him any questions in this film.
You wanted to keep it at a reasonable running time.
I wanted to talk to these people.
No, I think you did a phenomenal job picking people. It was really cool to see stuff put together. And I like the way it ebbed and flowed with going with the different angles of the stores and like the idea of like Thrifty selling records. Is such a
epic.
Forget.
I mean, I have records that are worth so much money that I bought at Thrifty.
You forget at certain times like how like it wasn't a niche world where you go into one place. That this was just a commodity that was at places, and you had to dig and look for stuff.
Well, Woolworths had, like, you could buy, they'd have these packages of 3 singles that were cutouts for like $1, and then all the thrifty stuff. I mean, they were selling imports. It was bizarre, and they'd be like 59 cents. And you just go in there and you go like, oh, I know who this band is. I've never heard them, but 59 cents, I'm in. And or like when Lisa pointed out Whitefront, I bought the first Velvet Underground album there. You weren't finding it anywhere else. I bought it at Whitefront. I mean, it was bizarre. I mean, but that was.
Remember Zodi's?
Zodi's.
That's where my family shopped.
I bought the first Led Zeppelin album for
Yeah.
$3.98 at Zodi's.
That was part of the film. Was this day and age, everybody can. I mean, I think everybody here would relate when I say, everything's done online on the internet. So I was just trying to kind of touch base with people or get across
Back in
the
my
message.
day.
Yeah, I mean, and then I'll be 45 next month, but the record stores. That changed my life. You'd go there and you'd buy something because it looked cool, and then you started to identify with the labels. Discord record. For me, it was like Discord Records, SST, Alternative Tentacles. Those are the big ones, but there was a ton of smaller ones. And Frontier obviously was a very big game changer in my life. But there's a resurgence in vinyl, and you see all this stuff coming out. Like we stopped at Amoeba today and hung out for an hour, and I don't even know what the fuck I was doing there. You know what I mean? Seriously, like I was like, I don't even know what's up, but just to try to get some sort of message across in the film of how it used to be, how you would stumble upon stuff. You didn't really know what you were looking for, but a record store changed your life, and or wherever you found these records. When you were actually out looking for vinyl, looking for music, that was the way, the only way it was made. It was on a record, It wasn't online. It wasn't on a CD, blah, 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 so...